I just had an amazing conversation with Jason, the author of Selling with Love and the host of Selling with Love podcast. And in this conversation, you're going to learn a lot about how you can actually go ahead and sell with integrity, build your business, and become a better person while you're doing that. All right, welcome everybody. We got Jason Marc Campbell, the author of Selling with Love, here with us today. Welcome to the show. Super excited to have you because we had a lot of conversations regarding content, building a persona and a presence online, and selling in the backend. Now, you're a big advocate of selling with love and not with the pushy way of selling. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I come across a lot of creators and business owners that feel very uncomfortable selling online because they feel like they're exposed online and it just feels kind of icky for them. So you talk about selling with love. What moment made you realize that sales didn't have to be manipulative?
Well, the moment realizing, there's a couple of points in my life that I think about when you ask that question. One being from a very young age. I remember just going door to door, actually. I had in high school a chance to go do some charity work, which was selling chocolates to your neighbors.
And I've seen it in the movies.
Yeah, right. In the movies. Well, you've seen that I don't know, in Canada, they'd ask us to sell this world's greatest chocolate. And what I found interesting is one of my earliest memories of selling was that. And I wasn't aware of how significant it was for me at the time because I went to the neighbors' doors. I asked them, hey, do you guys want to buy some chocolate? They said, oh, sure. Most of them had a positive experience. I was from a really small town, so it was very easy and approachable to go to the neighbors and ask them this. And when they had a positive response, they bought the chocolate. I was like, great, I raised money for charity. They got chocolate. They're happy. This is a very positive experience. And funny enough, by the seventh door that I went to knock, the person, when I asked them, hey, do you want to buy some chocolate? She says, give me a second. I'm going to ask my daughter if she wants to buy some. And lo and behold, lady comes down the stairs. It's this beautiful girl that's my age. And I end up getting her number and ends up being a person I dated for a few weeks while I was in high school. So selling with love definitely probably started around that time. But what I found very interesting is most people's first experience with sales is usually not something as positive. We'll usually have, a personal experience where somebody maybe took advantage of us. And I think in our generation, maybe walking through the mall and having somebody trying to get you to buy a cell phone plan and being very aggressive about it and pushing you, or buying a used car often comes as an example. And even if it's not something you directly experience, you often have a story of somebody who's had a negative sales experience and you start becoming very defensive, protective. And what I've noticed is anybody who's going into the entrepreneurial path realizes sales is a necessary thing you need to do as an entrepreneur. You start thinking, oh my God, when I go and sell, am I becoming like that caricature, manipulative, slimy person? And I guess I'm on a mission to make sure that people realize there's a much different way you can do sales that doesn't need to embody that. And it'll be the key to make you successful.
A lot of salespeople have this, they're perceived as pushy and might be arrogant. And how do you feel about that? Like you just touched up on it, but selling with love, does that reduce or does that take away that perception from salespeople?
There's something I still have to reconcile with my own thoughts, which is, and there was a time that I've made sales where I was a douchebag. There was a time in my early 20s, I didn't ask too many questions. I went ahead and sold a product. I didn't necessarily care about the outcome. And doing that a couple times did not make me feel good. There was a moment where I was like, hold on a second. Let me give you a perfect example. There was a program I had to sell to people. It was about buying US real estate. And I was helping people become entrepreneurs by transacting real estate. It was during the 2008 crisis, so you could buy really discounted properties as a Canadian. And there was an individual who had a criminal record. And if you did have a criminal record, you couldn't even go into the US to see the properties. And I remember being on the phone and telling them to buy this program that would teach them how to buy US real estate. And I was saying, hey, listen, you won't even need to go into the US. You're going to do this all sight unseen. Like you can make money, you can build your power team, you can do this all remotely, which all of it is quite true. But let's be quite honest, like if you ain't having ability to even go to the asset that you've purchased because of a criminal record, that becomes a pretty risky venture to get into. But since I was incentivized to sell the program, I was sold myself into the program and I had to push it on others. I was very pushy and the person at first was very reluctant and I got them to consider instead of saying no. They're like, let me think about it. And then I was like, great, I'm going to follow up and do something. But I remember being off that call and I'm like, damn, that didn't feel right. Like I was more interested of me doing something as opposed to the success I wanted from them. And sitting with that They didn't buy, by the way. And I didn't feel bad. I was like, I'm glad they didn't. But then I was like, I think there's something more to do that. And what I've noticed is a lot of people that go into the sales route, you first learn, oh my God, like if you start learning to sell, you realize how powerful it is. And you sometimes get full of yourself. You need to kind of step back and graduate from that. So if you're asking the question, like, how do I feel about a lot of negative salespeople that are being pushy and they're pushing this prerogative? It's like they need to grow out of that. I don't think most people that are doing that are necessarily that happy or fulfilled. It's like burning the candle at both ends. And if you go back into the caricature, like what the typical person you would see doing this is like stockbroker, chasing money, never happy, prostitutes, drugs, alcohol, numbingness. Like there's almost like a need to numb yourself to the fact that you're not selling with love. So something's wrong and it demands investigation.
Let me touch on something that you mentioned. You started in a way that was douchebaggy. Do you think it's like the natural progression of a salesperson to start out being not necessarily being a douchebag, but like starting out being pushy? Because like if you sit down and read any sales book, it's going to start telling you, ask a lot of questions, but then find the pain points, find out the challenges and the struggles of the end or the desired outcomes that your potential client is facing. And then obviously a salesperson's kind of mind is already shifting and putting the puzzles together. How can I influence their thinking so it shapes and becomes, like my product becomes that desired outcome that they're actually looking for? And then eventually, do you think that your personal journey shaped your values and how you look at sales? So I guess there are two questions. One of them is everyone starting out pushy, and then how your personal values developed?
I would not think that most people start pushy. I think most people actually start quite guilty or shameful. I think most people start with not wanting to do sales. And I think a lot of our early childhood programming around don't talk to strangers, children should be seen, not heard, no means no, stop asking. Those are usually the first encounters you have as a young person asking for what you want. And the responses you get, parent might be tired and might be giving you the responses, which is like, hey, stop asking. So you'd typically be very resistant to selling, right? Like the first stage, you'll be a bit shamed and guilty about it. And that's why you'll see a lot of people, even professional salespeople, the most difficult activity is typically follow-up, where most sales happen after 4 to 7 touch points. Most people don't even follow up once, maybe twice. And you miss on a lot of opportunities because you're like, I don't want to bother them. So when you say, do most people start being a pushy, annoying? No, I think they start being very resistant. And it's almost like you have to counter that with going blindly into following a sales practice that turns you into maybe being a bit more assertive, aggressive, maybe not listening as much because you haven't even developed the skill to be confident enough to just ask and to overrule these prior beliefs. And the simple way I would explain this is as you're journeying into the world of sales, it's kind of like learning to do the math before the multiplication. You have to learn the addition and you have to do some like baby steps, which is like follow the scripts, don't deviate from the script before you hand over the calculator, start becoming a lot more complicated and sophisticated in the way that you sell. If I'd add a more complicated answer to that question, I am very much into personal growth, personal development. I love studying this stuff. I mean, I've been in the industry for so long. So even touching on the personal values question you said is I'm a big fan of integral theory, spiral dynamics. And this is where it speaks of levels of consciousness. To keep it even simpler, I'll talk about Maslow's pyramid of needs, which is like at the beginning, maybe you're just selling in a state of wanting to survive. And then when you're doing that, maybe you do whatever it takes to sell. You can't even see the possibility of, hey, maybe listening more than talking is going to be a powerful skill. You're just like, I need to just make this happen and I will squeeze any lemon that comes close to me, right? So there's levels for you to grow through, to learn from, to transcend. And the thing that breaks my heart the most is that for a lot of people, they will get their success. They will transcend those levels at the expense of others. And I don't know how to reconcile that. Like I mentioned, I made some sales that I've regretted. I've grown from it. Now I'm making sales as best as I can to make it so that it's win-win for everyone. I'm advocating for selling with love, but I do know I've made some sales I've regretted. And I think for everybody on their journey to discover how to sell with love, they might end up doing a sale or two that they'll regret, but it'll create so much growth in the process. That's something I don't have an answer to yet.
It's beautiful. I love the analogy. You touched on fear of rejection in the beginning, right? So everybody has that fear in the beginning, and then you either push through it or you love the product and you believe in the product that you're selling and you do not have to fear the rejection. Do you think selling with love, the whole concept, takes care of that?
In the method that I teach, there's one of the love of selling with love, which is self-love. And on that concept of self-love, like on the other side of the fear is the love, right? And the fear of rejection is always going to be with you. I think we're all trying to, have acceptance, be respected. And when you're going out there and selling, you might first be somebody who's accustomed to knowing what the rules of the games is and know how to succeed the game. If you're very good at school, you study for the test, you want to get an A, right? And that means you're getting like 90% of the answers right. You get an A. And if you've always been programmed that that's the kind of rules in the games you want to play, when you get into sales, someone might not have told you that winning the game might look at you having a 30% grade. That's failing in most games, but in sales, it's 30% might be celebrated. And so if you're somebody who has a high achiever personality, you've always done well in school, and you get into sale, you're going to face a lot of rejection that you might not have ever been accustomed to before. And to have an understanding that you can accept that knowing that every no is getting you closer to a yes from a different person. 1 out of 5 person you talk to will say yes, 4 will say no, and not taking it personally. To me, it's a lot of exposure therapy. I think for anybody who's getting into sales needs to get accustomed to that.
So much value in what you're saying. Recently, we work with a lot of coaches, freelancers, agencies, creators, and build out their entire programs. Now, recently, I realized that a lot of creators are really good with marketing, right? Putting out content, portraying their lifestyle, but they're very bad with sales. How do you see the correlation between salespeople being good with marketing and marketers being good with sales? What would be the kind of the bridge in between the two that you see as you're a marketer yourself?
A marketer who doesn't understand sales is someone that can be steered into activities that might not produce the results, but will keep you busy. A salesperson who needs to learn marketing will only lead the marketing that brings the types of results because they're very sales focused. This is my bias because I'm a more sales oriented person. But what happens with sales is you usually connect individually with people. You speak to individuals. You are face-to-face talking, understanding, connecting. So the reality of people's problems, the reality of what they desire is something that you're much more close to than someone who might just be in marketing, who might only be looking at survey data, which can give some insights, but it misses that visceral connection. And I have to share a story here because when I was working at Mind Valley, which was a personal growth online course business. They work in a lot of people that are in this industry. We were doing a product launch and it was with this psychic who was doing energy clearing sessions. Okay. And I was in charge of the marketing and we were launching this product. And at first I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this sounds a little crazy. So I decided to get on a call to experience it myself. And I got on the call, lady did some clearings and said some chants and words that help people transcend, clear, all that stuff. And I was like,
sounds woo-woo.
It is woo-woo. And I was like, I don't think it did much for me. And then I took a step back and I was like, hold on. I'm not the guy buying this. I'm the guy selling this. So what do I need to do to understand if this is worth selling is I need to talk to people. So that's where my sales instinct said, I need to contact people who have bought this in the past. I need to talk to them and ask them, why the hell did you buy it? And are you happy that you did? So I ended up setting up a bunch of phone calls with people that have bought it in the past. That was my market research. My sales instinct kicked in and I talked with people. I was like, Lucy, why did you buy this? Chuck, why did you buy this? Those are 2 people I distinctively remember because when Lucy bought it, it helped her get she owned a small flower shop. She was very disconnected with her daughter. And what happened is she started doing these energy clearing sessions and she felt really good. Her daughter once asked her what this was. She did it together with her daughter and they started doing these together. And it was like one of these activities that she started doing with her daughter that brought her back close with her daughter. And it felt really good. It was really fun. And it gave her the result that she was looking for, which was happier, more peace. And she got to reconnect with her daughter in the process. I was like, wow, that's amazing. But Chuck was the story that stuck with me so much because I called him and he's like, listen, I've always struggled keeping a job. I've been seeing a psychiatrist and I started doing these sessions and I felt so good. And I went to my psychiatrist and he started noticing some results in me and he started seeing that I was becoming much more stable. And every time I joined these calls, it was like a happiness booster pill for me. And since he started doing these, he started to keep a job. He's been doing well at the job. He's been changing and lowering his medication. And he was like, this is the best thing I've ever invested in. So as the marketer, now I was so motivated to figure out how to make the positioning, what kind of assets to create and how to do this launch, which made, I think it was about $750,000 when we sold it. And it was a beautiful launch experience. And the sale was so clean that even those who didn't buy got massive value in the process. And that to me is what happens when you are in sales inclined and you get into marketing, is you start really working on what will resonate with the people.
Beautiful, beautiful. And this was for a personal brand or for a company?
This was an individual that was being published by Mindvalley.
Okay, understand. Yeah. Speaking of individuals and personal brands, how do you see, so you're not only an author, but you're a soon-to-be husband, a podcaster, a great friend, a great barbecue host. I know that from experience. And you're also a creator yourself, right? So, and you've been a CEO as well for personal brand businesses and online businesses, have been launching and gaining experience in digital business. How do you see personal brands and people? I mean, we live in Bali. There are a lot of content creators. We are content creators. How do you see personal brands go from that marketing, building trust, to actually having more sales conversations? And then my next question will be about conversion events. But how do you see content turning into sales event and sales conversations?
I mean, I think the whole space of building a personal brand, creating the content is just building your trust equity, right? So, I mean, nobody really wants to do business with a stranger. People like to do business with people they like and trust. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the easiest ways we get to do that now in the digital age is that it's very easy for you to produce content that gets to people to know, hey, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. Here are things that I've learned. Here are things that I share. And when you come with that energy and you show consistency, and I think that's one of the most underappreciated things that you can naturally convey just by saying you're doing something and actually doing it, to show that you're consistent, is already one of the biggest ways of building trust equity. So when someone's out there and wants to start building a personal brand, whether they're deciding I want to launch a podcast, like 95% of people that want to launch a podcast give up.
21
right?
shows, right? On average.
Is it?
I believe
I think it's like 5 shows.
Okay.
I'd be very surprised if it's 21 shows. I highly doubt it.
Don't quote me on that, but something like more than 90% of podcasts never make it through 20 shows.
Oh yeah, that for sure. For sure. And so, well, that shows a lack of consistency, right? So it kind of becomes a trust drop. If you decide to go on a social platform and you're starting to post regularly, people might show you for a while. People forget how long it takes before something takes off. And if you're not really excited about it, you're not that passionate about it, and you're getting distracted by the next shiny thing, maybe it wasn't really your thing to begin with, right? I think a lot of people like to look at the giants of the industry and assume that it's overnight success. But you got I believe Alex Hormozi is probably a big example for your audience. And this guy's recording in his closet, does content for like a decade before anybody knows who the hell he is. And now he's everywhere and people are like, oh, let's use these strategies he's using now. But the grind in the basement that he did for the longest time is what people don't notice. Speaking to another guy I brought on my show, he's talking about Ed Millett, which is a big name as well. This guy was a door-to-door salesman, a loser that was knocking door to door. Can you believe that? And then suddenly he got to the big stage, and all the work that he did behind the scenes has helped him build the backbone, experience to be ready for the moment when it came. So if you're asking about the role of building your personal brand, yeah, it's very essential. I think it's, in the age of AI, you can get the answer to anything. But the only difference as to why I would want to get the answer from you is because you've built some sort of trust equity, and you can do that through the content and being consistent with it. Caveat, I don't want someone to be listening to this being like, oh my God, well, what Jason said, I shouldn't start anything until I'm 100% sure.
Nope.
That I am doing the thing that I like. But if you keep showing up, that's the great consent. Like that's the way to show that you're consistent. Like I've done a lot of different activities. I've tried a lot of different products as well. And I keep showing up. And for me, I have at least my pillar content, which is the podcast. Correct. Like I know every Monday an episode goes out, and that's been happening for 6 years. And that's my pillar. And everything else are tests that I do. So find something that you can consistently do and then build on that, test on that. And It'll take longer than you think, but the moment you've started getting into that rhythm, and you can definitely do that in a way that doesn't cost you that much, but it's just a rhythm that you build. It's almost like doing a meditation in the morning, right? Super good for personal growth. And then once you start doing it, it starts compounding its benefits. The content will do the same. And if you want to speak about, the place of conversion, a lot of people are afraid to ask. And I think it's so nice online because you can do a lot of times an ask and nobody knows the result of your ask.
Exactly.
No one knows what really happened when you do ask. So you could literally put a Instagram story saying, hey everyone, I'm putting together a program for 10 people and I'll walk you through 4 weeks where I'll teach you some of the best methods for you to live a more aligned life. And I'm going to do this for, instead of $1,000 for my usual coaching programs, I'll do it for just $10. 10 people for $10. This will be a case study that I'm going to follow with 10 people. And I would love for you to share. If you'd be interested to join, just reply to this story and I'll share more details. Now, there's a couple things that could happen if you do that. One is nothing. Like not a single person engages, not a single person replies, but you will have practiced the pitch. But what will more than likely happen is maybe nobody responded, but people saw that you asked and they went like, oh, that was interesting. That's it. Most people are just on the sidelines, right? Maybe one person will say, hey, what's this about? I'll do it for $10. And you're like, hey, guess what? I have a little surprise. Everybody's getting one-on-one coaching. Because they don't need to know that no one else did it. So you could say, we'll do a one-on-one. So you could have that. Or maybe you'll have 100 people come in. Deal with that problem when you have 100 people that come in and then go pick the best one. But don't stop yourself for problems that haven't occurred yet. Just put yourself out there and ask, because the consequence is what? There's no cost.
Absolutely. I loved the little presentation you've done here with the sales pitch. Now, you've been through quite a lot of conversion events, I believe, right? What you just presented here is one being on stories on Instagram. If you would have to pick between different kind of these conversion events, like whether it's a webinar launch, whether it's a pre-recorded masterclass or an evergreen webinar, whether it's a story ask, do you have any favorites?
Yeah, it's webinar.
Webinar?
It's webinar. And Live, 100% live. Don't even think of pre-recording a webinar until you've done your webinar 10 times.
Yeah.
Don't be lazy. You need to be in front of the people to see how they respond to your message. And every time you do it live, you get to do it a bit better every single time. And one of the key things I've noticed for people who struggle with sales or doing these conversion events is they don't have a sales presentation. And I think that's the number one thing you can prioritize as a coach, a creator, anything is do you have a couple of slides that you've put together that discusses what your offer is? Who you are, what you're about, why do you do what you do, and here's how I do it. Do you want in? And this is something I advocate a lot for, is that if you build together a slide deck that answers the why, the what, the how, and the what if, which is basically your sales presentation, you can use that on every single medium. You can do that on a webinar. You can do that if you're running a challenge. You can do that if you're doing a sales presentation one-on-one. It just becomes that. If somebody says hey, jump on stage, I want you to do a presentation. Do you have a deck that you'd be ready to present? Do you have a story or a message you'd be able to share? If you prepare a sales presentation, you would be ready for anything that gets thrown at you, any opportunity that comes your way. And so I like the webinar because you're in front of real people and you can get the feedback. And even if one person shows up to your webinar, now you have a one-on-one sales presentation. Beautiful. This person's going to have the best experience ever. If 10 people show up, great. Did anybody buy? No problem. Why not? Talk to them, follow up with them. Each and every person who registers for the webinar gets to be someone you might have a conversation with, so you get to understand them better. I do need to give some credit to Jason Fladlian, who's a man that came onto my platform, and he's the one who really stretched why the webinar is the number one thing. I agree with him. And it's funny, just before I came here, I was putting it in my calendar. I'll be doing a webinar on the 11th of April, just because I love getting in front of people, testing offers, and seeing what the people want.
Amazing. Now, going into the technicalities of webinars. When I think of webinar, and it could be, a mistake, you just went through the how, why, what ifs, the parts of the sales deck. I always think of the psychological route you take the audience through when you're creating a webinar, right? You're always making a bold claim in the beginning. You're presenting a problem, then you give them some context, then obviously you transition into the solution to that problem, and then the how at the very end usually is, again, after another transition, is the offer. Now, do you see that this is the only way to hold a webinar, or how do you usually structure a sales deck or a webinar?
I would typically think of something along the lines of spin selling. which is a sales methodology, which talks about like assess the situation that the people that are on your webinar would be in if they'd register for having a solution to their problem. So it's like, because the key thing, one of my principles in selling with love is love the client. And the way to show love to the client is to understand them. And the number one thing you'll want to prove when somebody just signed up to your webinar is, do you even understand them? Because nobody wants to listen to you until they understand that you took the time to understand them. So the first thing I want to establish is, hey, if you're here, here's what I have a feeling that you might be dealing with. Here's what your situation could look like. And I'll give you an example from my presentation. I think will make this quite tangible. Is I talk to people saying, have you just recently, went through a coaching program, got certified, learned a methodology, and you were told how you're going to be generating thousands of dollars, replace your 9 to 5 and have all the success in the world, yet you haven't made a single sale. Anyone you've talked to thinks you're quite weird and you just jumped on the next shiny things. You're almost being considered like one of those people who joined an MLM and you're just trying to go out there and serve people with these tools you've learned that have helped you, transformed you, and the power it holds, but you're so paralyzed and terrified that any person you talk to will start judging you, and you'll be back at going to your job and realizing you wasted a bunch of money on a certification that's not going to create you a single dime. When I open my webinar with that, my comments go crazy. That's why I do it live, because I can see how people respond and they go like, holy shit. And when I see that, I'm like, I understand them. And in the moment that happens, if I'm following a spin selling methodology, I'll be like, here's what this looked like. See, a lot of you have good intentions. A lot of you want to make an impact in the world. And what I hate is that most people that might not have the same level of integrity, care, and want to deliver value will go out there and start selling products that are terrible for people, ruining the industry, giving them terrible experiences. And you'll be the one missing out on opportunities. Bad people win again, which is why I'm here teaching people on selling with love, because I'm tired of seeing douchebag marketers and salespeople take away attention, sell subpar products, and I want to turn the good people into good marketers and salespeople.
I really love the idea of selling with love. In general, I'm surrounded by amazing people, amazing team, amazing clients. Now, what I do see though is selling, to make it scalable, you keep losing touch with the client or with the brand. Once you let's go back to online selling. You introduce closers, setters, and a sales team. How do you train them to sell with love?
Yeah, sales. And this depends on, like, for anybody listening here, there's levels to this, right? Yeah. We're talking on level 1 stuff if you're an individual, but you're not going to have issues with setters and closers if you're not already so busy with the amount of clients coming in, right? Like solve the problem when it comes up. And this is an issue I deal with personally, is I'm so good with automation scaling, which sometimes I find myself being better working with my clients where I'd be CEO for their organization making 7-figure, because I'm really good at that sweet spot to create systems, processes.
Yep.
And so when you start speaking about scaling the team, now you start getting into the realm of culture. So you're getting in the field of management, and sales culture and managing a sales culture is something that comes from the founder that needs to walk the talk and set those in stone. So what are the stories you've cultivated that would imbue the types of ways you want sales to happen? So I'll give you an example. If I'm getting my team to sell on Selling with Love, I share the story that I shared earlier about the man who had a criminal record that wouldn't have been able to go into the US. And I would share that story saying, in this case, I would love for you to be honest. Like, I regret trying to sell this person, which I knew was not qualified. Instead, a much better way to do this would be saying, hey, listen, it sounds like you have some restrictions that might not make you the most successful with this program. But if you feel like you want to give it a shot, we're going to put all our love into making sure you're successful. But you have to understand you're dealing with constraints that I can't control. And when I share that story that I push the sale and it causes me pain and I don't want us to do that, your team of setters and closers that read these stories will start getting cues on how to behave themselves. So you need to collect a series of sales and not sales that guide people into understanding, what do I do when someone says, I can't afford this right now, my credit card is maxed out? Do you try to tell them, hey, guess what? We can put this on Affirm. Buy now, pay later. Do we try to squeeze them into a situation we know they're going to get in trouble? Or do we say, listen, as an organization, we have a standard that if you're not in a position to buy this and it's going to be painful for you to buy this, we're not solving a problem, we're creating a new one. And you start sharing these stories, these become the guide bars for people to go and sell. Does it mean you're going to close less? Yes. Your conversion rate might go from 7% to 5% in the immediate term. But if you're building a brand and a company and you're already considering having closers and setters, it means you're not in this for the short term, you're in this for the long term. That extra 2% that you showed compassion towards ends up being buyers that might not buy right now, but might tell 3 friends, might buy in a few months. And the majority of the money that you're going to make in sales is that 60% of the people that are not no's, they're just not now's. And I think that's one of the unmeasured metrics in sales, that if you keep doing things within place of love, you start building brand equity, scaling, and that trust equity that will make each sale you do further down the road easier and easier.
I love it. We talk about scaling teams, sales teams, and the sales of companies. But how do you maintain love and integrity in selling when you're under pressure, either financially or emotionally? And in this case, we have to come back to the individual, right? It's usually not the company that's under emotional pressure, but the individual that works for that company or is starting out in a sales job.
Yeah. Sales training is quite important. And it comes back to some of the stories as well. I often share this video that was on YouTube for a while, and probably still is there. I haven't seen it in a long time. Is a guy walks into a used car lot, and then the sales guy is like, "Hey, you can buy this car. It's $5,000." The guy's like, come on, give me a deal. And he's like, "Sorry, like this is the best price, $5,000." He's like, "Come on, I'm going to walk away. Make it $4. And then the guy's like, "I can't. It's $5." And he's like, "Fine." Then he walks away. He's like, "Okay, $4, you can take." He's like, "Ha, got it." And then the guy goes home, and when he walks in the door, you see his wife is holding a baby that's crying, and the husband's just coming in defeated. She was like, "How was the day?" And he's just pouring a little bit of whiskey, and he's not talking. She's like, "You gave him the friends and family deal with no commission." And he's like, "I had no choice." And that story breaks my heart, because nobody knows on the other side of a pushy salesperson what is the reality that they're facing. And most will think that the best way for them to change their financial situation is to push harder, be more, and then like your natural reaction instinct will be to be a bit more desperate in the way that you sell. What needs to be reminded is how to break that cycle. It has to come with an abundant mindset, has to come from a place of selling with love. And it's so hard to be reminded of that in emotional times, in hard times. But every successful salesperson that starts having more success don't care about their needs more than the needs of the client. They're very focused on the client. And you have to have training. You have to repeat that, being like, guys, sometimes it's tough, but remember, every time you sell this product to the individual, it's about how you're improving their life. It's about their needs. You're listening, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Like there's a lot of things you need to remind your sales team about, because if you're, and it's an, let's be clear, like my whole philosophy around selling with love is the fact that in every sale, an emotion is transacted. It's either going to be selling with love. It's either going to be some rational sabotage. It's going to be some fear, pride mix, or some guilt and shame. And what you're trying to do is, as you're going to be going up these levels, and like, you're not always going to sell with love, but every time you're catching yourself like, oh, mate, wait a second. I don't think that's a very loving way of selling. You have to catch yourself and come back into like, wait, what works? Selling with love works. How was I there for this person? How, when the next lead comes in, how can I come from a place of love? How can I come from a place of care? How can I lead this person into making a decision that's going to make their life better? So you constantly need to be reminded.
I love this. One of my mantra is, when we're creating programs and services for our clients, is let's create the high ticket backend offer first, right? So when you create your final product, whether it's the mastermind, whether it's a high ticket education offer, whether it's a agency service or any type of services, you put in the energy and you know what the value and the result and the transformation you're going to be able to provide for your client. Now, you talk a lot about selling is an energy exchange. How do you think it relates to selling a backend high ticket offer? How do you make your audience, leads, and soon to be clients feel that energy that you already put in to creating that big offer?
I believe it's Brian Tracy who says sales is a transference of enthusiasm. So when you're coming in with an open heart, you're going to turn a little childlike. Like, have you ever seen a kid that's excited about showing his new toy? Like, I had Power Rangers growing up, man. And like, when somebody would come to visit, I'd be like, oh my God, you got to see my Megazord transformation. And I'd get super excited. And I still have that annoying energy. Like my fiance, definitely. I have these moments where I talk to her and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm playing this video game right now called No Man's Sky. And I just found this new airship and you need to come see, and please just pretend to be excited, because I know you don't care, but this is like my excitement I want to transfer with you. And she's like, fine, okay. She's giggling and she comes to see. So when you've put in the care, the love into creating a product, a high-end product, which can be scary because you're going to be transferring a lot of energy when somebody transacts with you, like $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Every money is just stored energy and you're about to transact that. So you've put in a lot of love. You're going to deliver a lot of energy in this exchange. And the mindset that I teach when you're selling with love is when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return. That's what selling with love is all about. So you might have a $20,000 package, but you know that for the lead that you started to understand what are their problems and you realize that the value that they're going to get from purchasing this, the real value is going to be 30, 40, 50, 100,000 of energy. When you go to sell it to them for 20, you're going to be excited. This is why it's so important to know the customer, because you'll encounter 90% of the customers that the value that they're going to get out of what you're selling is maybe going to be a tenth of the cost. You got to be real. The majority of the people you're going to encounter are going to look at this and being like, for me, I sell a $5,000 package where I really guide people. I go in, I bring a team, I help them build their sales presentation. Someone's just getting started in coaching. They're not even made a single dime. They want to buy this for $5,000. I'm like, no, you have some graduation to go through, and you need to like put in some work, get a bit of some momentum, because this is too expensive for you. But when I talk to an individual who's made some existing sales, are really looking to turn up their conversion numbers, and I know that once I go in and provide this, they're going to get 10x results on 100 grand. Like now the 5,000 is an easy purchase. I'm excited to sell it to them. And there's a mistake of thinking that if somebody rejects your offer, that your offer is bad. Please don't make that mistake. You have to make sure you understand who you're selling to, because now every sales call is not about you begging that person to buy from you. You should go into every sales interaction to ensure that, am I talking to the right person, that I know what I'll give them is going to be worth so much more than what I'm asking as a purchase. Now it's not a very needy conversation. Like if you're like, listen, I want to spend 20 minutes with you because I have a service where I really solve big problems when it comes to increasing your sales and conversions. And I just want to make sure to understand where you're at, what problems you're facing. And if I see that what I'm going to offer you is really going to bring you 10x the results, you're going to be very excited about the end of this call. Like, man, that's a very different energy.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think energy is the biggest thing you need to pay attention to when you're in an energy sales conversation. Because being like, oh, I really need you to buy this. Nobody wants a needy person.
No.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it. You touched up on mindset in your answer, and as we know, mindset is a big part of growing a business, growing a team, growing your offer, growing yourself as a person, personal growth. As an ex-Mind Valley leader yourself, what would you recommend people look into, or how do we get started shifting your mindset?
Yeah. It's so funny because I've had conversations about mindset and I get so annoyed because mindset's not tangible. It sounds like it's again in the woo-woo category, and I'm a very logical guy. Like I want tactics, I want operational strategy. Like I want things to execute, and the mindset piece feels fluffy.
Exactly.
You can't even hold it, right?
Yet it's one of the most important.
Man, it's even more important. Like anybody who's told you mindset is important, you're like, yeah. It's more important than that. And it's so crazy, man, because I've created so many products where I give people, I'm like, hey, done for you, build the entire thing. And I'm seeing people, their mindset comes up. And like this happens. It's so crazy. Every time I had this client I took on, and I'm putting together the entire package. And what I realized as we have a few conversations is I'm no longer doing sales training with them. I'm helping them with their relationship with their business partner, which is their romantic partner. And they're having a disconnect because the mindset isn't at the same place. And I'm realizing, wow, their environment is sabotaging their success. So they're not doing what I'm saying. They're not applying. They're hesitating. Mindset is like the key. And a part of me is like, no, it can't be. And it's like, God damn it. It's so much is. So what can you do about it? Well, there's obviously a lot of self-help stuff that can help around that. And there's a lot of different prescriptions that can be thrown away. The one that seems to be the most consistent one is a sort of like gratitude practice. It sounds cheesy. Yay, welcome to a podcast, which is going to tell you to be more grateful. It's like, if you're not even grateful for the fact that you are here listening to a podcast, you've already won something. Like you have access to a device that lets you listen to a podcast. Celebrate that. I think we've become very pessimist. I think we've become very negative. And I think when you start opening yourself up to just taking more moments of being grateful for a lot of little things around you, it just shifts your energy a little bit to be a bit more positive, a bit more optimistic. And if you're going to be a salesperson transferring enthusiasm, you don't want to be a Debbie Downer. And it's just going to improve your quality of life a little bit. So, be a little more grateful might be the baby step I would start with. Aside from that is just taking a moment before every sales call and just reminding yourself, like, I don't know who I'm going to talk to, but there's a possibility that this person is going to be helped so massively by the end of this call, whether they buy from me or not. But if I go in with a good intention of just saying like, hey, I have the possibility to transform one life, whether they buy or not, is still better than just coming into a sales call with a negative attitude.
Wow. My sister recently quit her job to start her business, and she came to me with a lot of these questions that she thought is the next step to solve. And I've been working on a lot on mindset, personal growth, and not just for myself, but my clients, friends, family. And I realized that one of the key metrics she has to look at is also not about the next step, but the long picture of who I believe I can become. And then when I realize what is the lifestyle, what is the mindset, what is the identity that I want to exist in, that's when I can start creating those steps to become that person. But I feel like, and I have this concept, I think Tim Ferriss introduced it, or one of the big thinkers when it comes to personal brands, is lifestyle design. I always take my clients through this lifestyle design of who do you actually want to become in 5 years? Like 5 years is enough time for you to become anyone, right? Like if you want to be a lawyer in New York or the other side of the world, you can literally do that. Maybe not become a doctor, but give it 7 years.
7, yeah.
You know, have you ever thought of who you want to become and then start working towards that, or you just got caught up in the system or in the machine? And most people are getting caught up in the machine. And I like to think of this as a box that you're placed in, and you start growing, and then you think you're getting bigger and bigger because you see the side of the box, but you never realize that there is a whole universe outside of the box because you never actually took the helicopter view of what you could be. And that's exactly what I told my sister as well, that instead of taking the next step, the next logical step, building your business, think of what is it that who is it that you want to become long-term, and then kind of reverse engineer the steps you have to take in order to get there. Now, what are the mindset shifts that you think business people or creators or personal brands have to take in order to have that self-confidence and have that trust and belief in their own products, that they don't think of themselves as an icky salesperson, but they're ready to sell with love?
One thing I think is very helpful to kind of break that box and to think of bigger ideas often comes for me when I read biographies or autobiographies of people that have done some incredible things and realize the steps that they've followed were nothing too crazy. Like they were not people that were very special. They were special in their way, but it's not like they had a skill that can be nurtured in anyone who might have a similar vision. And one of the books that I think was most reflective of that was Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's biography about how he did Nike, just like surfing, traveling. Hey, I like shoes, like let's do this, things, meets people, serendipity, and like holy crap, it becomes Nike. And like that whole story.
Very interesting that you outlined that, because it sounds a bit more like the founder of Patagonia, because the way I remember Shoe Dog is like a lot of close calls to going bankrupt and a lot of dancing on the edge or walking on ice when it comes to, I don't think it was a walk in the park.
I'm not saying it was a walk in the park. I'm just saying he was just a dude. He was just a guy that got some interest and curious and decided to walk that path. And the things like really snowballed into becoming huge. And same with Walmart, is like a guy in his 50s, I think he started Walmart. He was already running grocery stores, but just started, paying attention. And I find those things quite fascinating. And then you start realizing, well, if they can do it, I'm pretty sure anybody who has a vision of wanting to do something great and goes out there and does the natural steps to do something great, I can start following some paths and they'll see that doors start opening up. Not a lot of people are bold and going out there doing big things. The world is starved for leadership right now. And I think when you're speaking about people, doing the next step within their next box, most people are operating like that. And if you decide to be the person that's like, I'm going to do something big, different, you already start standing out and getting more attention than anybody else that's out there. So it gives you a competitive advantage. I think the whole thing about like, can I go out there without being icky? If you are so excited about the vision that you've painted and you've decided to go forward and do something bold, doesn't matter. Like you will transcend that. That's a very like level 1 problem to have. And if you are afraid of being icky around you just making a couple sales, I don't think what you're thinking about is big enough. Because if it's like, hey, guess what? If you go out there, yeah, you might be icky. Some people will judge you. And if you don't want that, then just quit your idea. And if that's enough to make you quit your idea, you shouldn't even be going into it. But for me, one of the things I anchor myself on is the why of why did I even write a book on selling with loves? Why do I do the podcast? And to me, I've had experiences with a bad sales interaction where people took advantage of me. I've seen people get ripped off by salespeople. And I hate to see a world where there's so many people that have good products, good services, don't know how to sell, getting outbid by influencers who are just like scamming people. I hate to see that world. But every time I show up, I serve, I help people, I get to teach the good people how to use the right tools to sell powerfully. And it starts creating a world I want to see more of. So yeah, I'm tired today. Yeah, I'll look stupid. Maybe I'll go and do a pitch that'll be awful online. Who cares? There's one person that might learn to sell a bit better. And that's more important than all these fears that I have and these hesitancies that I have. And so if that's the kind of level that's holding you back, I think we need to dream a bit bigger and reconnect with the why. And I love that the exercise you get people to go into is take a step back and why are you even doing this? What do you want to do in 5 years? Then you start realizing, oh yeah, these are just going to be some little graduation steps.
Speaking of why and speaking of scammy influencers, the world we live in embraces social media, or maybe not embraces, but uses a lot more social media. And we get thrown a lot of shiny objects in front of our ways. Now, I fall into this trap of shiny objects quite a lot because I'm very ambitious and I love creating new stuff, but sometimes I just don't stick around long enough to see the outcome of something great that I've created. Do you have, it might be a bit more personal question.
No, yes, of course. There's always something. AI came out and everyone lost their shit.
You're losing it.
Yeah. And with reason, it's an amazing thing. And so, I think for me, what keeps me anchored is I know what the core message is that I do. It's all about selling with love. And it's whatever tools I can use to assist that. If there's any object that assists me in pushing that forward, yeah, go for it. Again, I spoke a little earlier by finding one thing that you're doing consistently that ends up being your sanity. Me, the podcast is my sanity check. I know I have a podcast that comes out every Monday. And if I know that's happening like clockwork, then I can anchor anything else I do with how does it enhance that? What do I do with the traffic that's generated with that? So I have at least that anchor piece. But I think for anybody who's trying to find themselves, they will need to go and test a lot of waters. That's part of the journey. You're testing stuff. But most of the times, I'm going to say for anybody at the very early stages, you're going to need to have 100 conversations with somebody to be able to get a conversion rate. Have you talked to 100 people? Because until you've done that, you don't know what your conversion rate percentage is. And so if you've talked to 4 people, they all said no, and you think your product sucks, you're 96 people short to actually having any real significant data.
Talking about offers, how do you, and you talked about talking to 100 people to get the conversion data. When do you know that your offer is validated from, we know that you can sell anything if it's packaged correctly, right? And then you want to, one of my favorite examples on this is, I believe the educational landscape is changing dramatically. If you look at what a university degree is giving you right now and how it gets you ready, whether it does or not, to real life, is changing very fast, right? If you go into business and management, you will learn the old management tactics, but to survive in today's economy, whether it's online selling, whether it's AI, whether it's personal branding content, growing a company, that just might not be enough. And developing courses in the university might be a bit too slow. So I am a very big advocate and a believer that the creator economy is going to grow up into the new education economy, basically. So more and more creators, skilled individuals are becoming educators. And that's why I'm also doubling down on creating educational offers and academies for businesses and experts. And Naval Ravikant said that he believes that eventually everybody is going to become a freelancer. Now, I feel like we tend to call freelancers not freelancers anymore, because now everybody's an expert, everybody's a personal brand. Even freelancers are becoming branded individuals online, and they go on under their name instead of just being a freelancer. How do you see the education space and individuals growing into becoming educators when it comes to selling? I do believe that your message is so valuable that there's just a bigger and bigger and an increasing market for it.
I think the information is it's already very commoditized, right? for example, what I'm teaching on selling with love is nothing new. And that's a reassuring thought. You would think it's like, oh my God, I'm teaching something that's been taught before. I picked up the book, which was The World's Greatest Salesman, which was like from the 60s. And it talks about like these scrolls that they found teaching about the great tactics of sales. And one of them is love, is one of the secrets, right? And I was like, okay, well, nothing new here. I come in as somebody to remind. And as you're seeing the current space we are now, the biggest thing that is being fought for people is attention. Okay. So the education space, it's already changed. There's a lot of content online. You can use AI. You can gather all that information, but does it deserve your attention? And has something happened that will push you and your attention to go into that space? And that's where I can see individuals playing parts. I'm not compensated as much for the actual message that I give, as much as I'm compensated for getting people's attention to pay attention to the message that I have, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So it's like somebody's going to be scrolling, say, on social media, and they could spend a minute seeing someone that's just like taking pictures of their food, or some influencer doing some interesting yoga poses, or they might come across me who's going to say, hey, listen, if you're a creator and you've been trying to have more success, you just need to learn to sell, and you can do it in a way that's non-douchey, and it's amazing, and it's doing from a place of love, and I can show you a few of the ways that you can be more successful. And I've captured their attention, directed it to pay attention to the information that's going to genuinely help. We're all fighting for that attention. I'm fighting McDonald's. I'm fighting, Tesla. I'm fighting Donald Trump, who's just, he's commanding all the attention right now.
Absolutely.
Whether that's in a good way or not, I'm not going to judge it, but we're all going for it.
This means that if you just think about it logically, your craft and knowledge in the proportion of your task is decreasing, because you have to become more and more of a media company, and we all do have to become a media company. So eventually, everybody needs to understand human behavior, psychology, sales, content creation, to be able to portray the message that you originally started from.
Every industry is going to be disrupted massively. The world is changing massively. And I might have rose-colored goggles. I tend to have rose-colored goggles, which means I love to see the world in a beautiful place.
At least it matches your shirt.
You gotta fit the brand. I believe that every single industry is going to become humanized. As technology takes a lot of the burden, the human to human connection is what's going to become more and more important. It's not going to be about creating a social media channel with 1 million followers. No, it's like, how do you show up for the people in your community? How are you showing up for individuals? Like, how are you communicating in a way that is making you be a human who cares? Those are going to be what's going to be left for getting attention. Is like, oh, this person comes across as human. This person actually cares, are going to be the values that I'm seeing more and more stick out in the marketplace. And that's why I think the people who have the good heart, the good intentions, are providing value. As the technology barriers is taking, anybody with an edge with technology can go into a scammy message, is going to be outcompeted by anybody who just cares, and is now going to be on a level playing field as technology makes the whole ecosystem flat. So my voice that I'm trying to get people's attention to is, if you care, if you do things with love, and you consistently do it in a way that provide value, draw people's attention to things that makes their life better, you're going to be fine. You're going to do well.
I really love the message that or the mission that you have. And you talked about love a lot, right? And you have the 5 loves of selling. Can you talk a little bit about product, client, process, stuff, and impact?
So the whole book speaks about selling with love by dividing the selling with love into 5 loves. It starts with impact. And I'll use a substitute word that'll make it very simple for people, because I basically answer the fundamental questions you need to answer if you want to convert somebody in a sale, which is the why, the who, the what, and the how. Love the impact. Why are you selling this? What difference does it make for the individual? What difference will it make in the world? What difference does it make in your life? Why are you selling? Like, when someone's pushing you to buy something, the question in the back of your head is, why is he doing this? And the instinct we have is like, oh, they're greedy, they're selfish, they're doing this for a commission. Those are whys that we can sense instantly. But if I go to one of my leads and I say, listen, I only work with ethical businesses that want to increase their sales because I want to see a world where more ethical businesses are succeeding at getting attention and converting, then I end up having people that align with that message. And if I'm pushing them to buy and I say, I know that you going into this program is going to bring you more revenue, more success, more clients with less stress, more peace. And I know that for a fact, and they feel it. They're going to be like, I understand why he's pushy. He actually cares. So you want to answer that question first. That's love the impact. The second one, which we've touched a lot on this conversation, is love the client. And the simple way to frame that is, how much do you understand the client? Because if I speak to 100 people, maybe only 10 of them are actually the right people that I understand, that I can actually help. And my sales calls are about making sure I'm getting on the phone with more of those people. So how much are you understanding people? How many people are you talking to, being in conversation with, figuring out who your target market is, where they're hanging out? How do you actually change their life? What problems do they have? And the more you get into this business and you're honing into understanding the client, the better success you're going to have. The third one is love the product, or love the offer, if you would rather use that word, which is, now that you know why you do what you do and you know who you want to do it for, are you designing the product that's actually going to solve their problems? I've had this mismatch so many times, and this is the trial and error. Like, have you ever seen these stories of like, we're in a garage and we're trying to figure out how to have this successful startup, and then suddenly a little thing happened where people made an order. Suddenly millions of dollars of investment, we start distribution around the world, and now we're Appled. And then like you watch that movie and you realize like they just made a little sale at a retail store and they were just figuring things out on how to build a computer. Suddenly they're Apple, and it fast forwards and you're like, hold on a minute, what the hell just happened there? It's the story of every startup. You're just trying to find the product market fit. That's the word that you would use. But what you're doing is you're throwing offers out there and seeing, is this solving the problem for people? I've done a product once. It was like, again, I sold a $5,000 product. I looked on my audience and there was a bunch of people that were at the beginning stages trying to make their first sales. I was like, oh my God, here I am building automated systems. You know, you could set closers, setters, whole shebang. And people are like, I'm just trying to get over my fear of speaking to 5 people. You're like, oh shit, wrong product or wrong audience. And you start investigating and playing with that. And those are the 3 loves that you really need to work on to make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons. Because if you love the impact, love the client, and love the product, then you can love the process of selling. That's the power. That's when you start learning psychology, systems, funnels, webinars, content strategies, all of that juicy stuff. And there's plenty of people that know that juicy stuff and use it for the wrong reasons. I make sure to teach the first 3 loves, because with great power comes great responsibility. But sales is damn powerful. Like, I have times that I've gotten myself into like sales mode, and the things that'll roll off my tongue are scary, because using the wrong intention can motivate masses, can move energy in positive or negative. And so I make sure that people really want to do it for the positive impact. And then you get curious, excited to learn about how to do all these sales stuffs, because everything you learn will help the people you want to help. And so those are the first 4 loves. The final one, which is interesting, is you're building a business, you're selling. I had a teacher of mine, Professor Rao, teaches creativity and personal mastery. And one of the messages he says is, hey, you can build a business, you can go make a sale. It might be successful, it might be not. But the real question you have to ask is, did you grow? And everything we're doing on this life is in the process of helping us grow. If you go into sales, you go into business, get ready for a path where you're going to grow really fast, because the last love is self-love. You want to face your fears, like fear of rejection, worthiness, blocks. Go into sell. Interact with other humans, make them promises, then go and deliver on those promises. You're going to be this close to everything that scares you and unleash you to become the greatest version of yourself. It'll be an accelerated journey.
Powerful messages you shared with us today, Jason. I wonder if what is next for you after, going on with your podcast for 6 years. Congratulations on that. Putting your book on the market and helping hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of people sell with love and sell with integrity. What's next for Jason?
I do have a lot of love for the coaches that are just getting started, and I see a lot of this industry is growing. A lot of them are learning to be certified, but they're still struggling with the sales. So I really want to create something that can help these people. And one of the core things I love doing right now is working with these authors that have businesses that I can come in, help them set up management teams, help set them sales process, and just have a ripple effect working with companies that have a positive impact. And when I turn in my skills, my competency into their organization, it really starts creating a ripple effect that's very positive. I highly enjoy that. I'm someone that also appreciates their peace, their lifestyle. I'm here in Bali with my fiance. I'm getting married. This is the most exciting thing in my radar right now. And I get to do that while serving people, come and have great conversations. And so I would say it's a good place to be.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation, and I'm looking forward to a lot more of these.
My pleasure.
Thank you, brother. And just like that, we wrapped up the conversation with Jason Marc Campbell, the author of Selling with Love. I hope it was very valuable for you. It was certainly very valuable and thought-provoking for me. I'm going to be putting out more podcasts and more value-based content about business, content creation, and growing online, and also selling online. So make sure to go ahead and subscribe to my channel and share this video with someone that you believe would benefit from this. Thank you so much.